course, you know this is the Solfeggietto of C.P.E. Bach, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. He was one of Bach's sons, and maybe one of the best of the four sons of Bach that went on to be notable composers. C.P.E. Bach was really revered in his time, and Mozart said of him that C.P.E. Bach, Emanuel Bach is how he was known, he is the father and we are the children. So a quote from Mozart like that carries some weight. This Solfeggietto is a fabulous piece to perform. It's pianistic, it's exciting, it's dramatic, and it typifies the style of Emanuel Bach, which was inventive and daring and bold. He was actually bridging the gap between the Baroque style of his father, Johann Sebastian, and going into the classical. You're going to hear shades of Beethoven in this, very dramatic and sudden dynamic contrasts, forte and piano. What I did, not only making the two-page chart of this, but this spectacular satellite view here, which I absolutely adore. You get this with your chart as well. This is the overview of the entire piece. And before I start to get into the teaching of the piece, I want to point out how this is built in 8 sections. Now, I took the liberty of color coding these 8 sections so that we can see how much is in the blue box. One half of the piece is in the very exact material, but just in 3 different keys: C minor, G minor, F minor, and then C minor again. The pink sections, these are arbitrary colors, are this interesting daringness, which we will get to. I'll show you what he does here that's unexpected and I think pretty avant-garde for the time. And then the greens as well, with their characteristics. So starting at the beginning, and I really worked a lot on this piece to learn it, and I have quite a lot of suggestions for you on how to start to practice. This is really a touch piece, a toccata piece. It takes a great amount of facility and finger work. There's going to be a lot of what I call scratching and kneading the keys with pressure on the fingertips for control. So if we take a look at the opening, I'll play as written and then we're going to break it down. Starting in C minor. The triad. He starts on the C minor triad in the left hand. G major, which is the 5th, and the 1 again. So the left hand is pretty easy. And then it repeats the same thing. Measures 1 and 2 repeat exactly measures 3 and 4, just up the octave. Now what he does is to break the triad. So the left hand will be like this. Do you hear that touch, that crispness? That's replicating the harpsichord with the detached and very crisp and clear. The technique is essentially important that this piece is even and clear. We don't want to have one note swallowed, and that what I mean a garbled and inaudible. Okay, so the rest of the challenge is all with the right hand. And what I did for myself is to start with this harmonic outline. I can do that in my sleep. The next time that comes, the next blue box is the G minor, and listen, it's exactly the same. Finally, the F minor, way down. That's that's a 10th plus an octave. It's a 17th. The G minor was just the 10th. And the opening was the 3rd. Isn't that interesting? So your very first blue box has the 3rd. The next blue box has a 10th. And the 3rd has this. Big distance. And that is where the challenge is. These leaps to get in real time and know exactly where to go. So I want to point out sixths. Know that those are sixths. Hear them. Now, I'm going to put now. I should probably slow this down. We always want to start slowly when we get a foundation going that's reliable. Don't try to go too fast. If you practice too fast before your fingers and mind are ready, and you start learning incorrectly and your fingers trip up and you make mistakes, you're putting all those mistakes in your brain. We don't want that. So slow it down so that you can track it and control it perfectly. That's a lovely way, just the right hand. And the final, at the ending, C, C. That's different there. The remaining part of this is where people generally have technical problems and it becomes messy. And that is in measure 2, the second half of the measure. That's a descending scale. That's melodic minor. So it's a 5-finger pattern. To get this really secure, I like to say the fingers 1, 5, 1, 5. And use your arm pulls. This will control it for you. Pull, pull, pull. Finally, the last one. 1, 5. So in my music, I circled the 1 and the 5 here in measure 18 and measure 20. And in the like measures 10 and 12, and 2 and 4. And why did I do that? Because I'm saying those to myself out loud and in my mind when I'm practicing. So when I put this all together, 1, 5. And then it will not fail you. Same with the G minor. 1, 5. 1, 5. And the F minor. 1, 5. 1, 5. Play it as many times as you need to so it's crystal clear and right under the hands. We already, by doing that, have half of the piece learned. How fabulous is that? Now let's look and see how he connects those 4 sections. Beginning on the second system, this is a really marvelous moment in the piece. It turns into flutes. Very lyrical. Let's take this slowly. A modulation. 5/7 to lead us to G minor. outline of this is beautiful. I practice the right hand alone and say E flat in measure 5, A flat, D, G. So here's the outline. And then these I block. Isn't that beautiful? C minor in the left hand, F minor. And then the whole thing repeats down a step. E flat, E flat. It's beautiful. The symmetry. Lyrical. The last line here is still stays with the G minor. C minor modulates to F minor. Now what this really is harmonically, let me play this for you, as the bass line in one descending line. Just the octaves make this line. It's inevitable, but we don't really hear it quite as obviously because he's jumping up the octave. That's pretty radical, and it's beautiful too. I highly recommend the blocking here. Forte and piano. That's like Beethoven with subito, sudden dynamic changes. Our F minor. Now, this is so incredible. If you want to talk about bold and daring and unexpected, look at what C.P.E. Bach does. I'm going to start with the F minor section, the modulation that this is leading to at the end of our last measure there, system 1 on page 2, which is a descending. These are inversions of F minor. Remember, this is our F minor strip. There's no indication what's coming. Listen to this. Dramatic, D flat, and C, and then B natural. That's typical Beethoven. It's just so marvelous. So that sounds like this as written. Down an octave. It's almost scary, almost ominous. And then shrieking out. And then more of this. Up. And this time he reverses the dynamics. Instead of forte piano, he does piano, subito forte. Just a marvelous, marvelous piece. So I think that concludes it, and thank you, and enjoy Solfeggietto.